Hello, my friends, and welcome to a brand new episode of Discourse in Magic. My name is Jonah Babbins, and in this episode, we sit down with Dustin Dean. Dustin is an incredible mentalist who you may have seen on your TikTok feed. He has over 500,000 followers on TikTok and countless videos that cross millions of views. And in this episode, we learn all about it. I've been lucky enough to work with Dustin inside of the mastermind, so we talk about how this TikTok growth affects or doesn't affect his business, how he got into it, how you can do it, plus a ton more behind mentalism, skepticism, and a ton more info along the way. You are going to love this episode as much as I do. Please enjoy a wonderful episode with the very talented Dustin Dean. Dustin Dean. Dustin, how are you?
Very good. Very good. Happy to be here.
I am very excited to have you here. Not only do we get to work together in the mastermind, but also you come up on my TikTok feed, which is so incredible. And you did for a while, and we're going to talk a lot about that today because you've really garnered a pretty large following and made some incredible strides for what magicians can do on social media. So let's get started at the very beginning. How did you get started in magic?
I'll spare you the boring details because it's literally the same story. 6 years old, got the magic kit, we all know. But then I feel like my story is the part where it gets a little unusual is the fact that, I live in the US. However, for some reason, when I was I want to say 12, 13, Darren Brown's show had a very limited run on sci-fi in America. And it wasn't even on that long, but for some reason I saw it and loved it because I already saw normal magic, David Blaine and Chris Angel, which I did love. Even Chris Angel, I loved at the time when I was a kid, that show inspired me. But seeing Darren Brown and seeing that, it seemed so different than normal magic. And at the time I was fooled into thinking it was just psychology. And it was it was just amazing to me. And to see also a person called a mentalist that was sometimes describing how he did the tricks, even if it wasn't really how he did the tricks. But I thought that was cool. I was like, whoa, he's revealing his own secrets to people. So that really inspired me. And I think Darren Brown was one of my biggest inspirations through a lot of things, which kind of spiraled me into mentalism and that realm of things. So that's kind of how it started.
Talk to me about sort of what that early magic life was for you. You're in upstate New York. Is that where you grew up or no?
Yeah. Born and raised in Syracuse, New York. It's right in the center of New York State. Usually when I tell people I'm from New York, they just imagine, the big city, tall building, but upstate New York is literally where I live is mostly farmland. And it's there's not much of a city. There is a city, but it's not much. About 4 hours away from New York City. I was born and raised here. And when I first started I used to do magic a lot through high school. And I used to love most of the magic I learned in the beginning was actually from YouTube. So speaking of social media and magic, that is where I learned most of the things that I learned to start, simple card tricks. Until I got a little bit older and started to really watch lectures and things like that. But yeah, it kind of started with YouTube and learning magic tricks and doing it for my friends and family. And it wasn't until I was 18 that I got my first corporate gig, which I think, listen, I say a corporate gig because it was a company that had a company picnic, but I'm pretty sure I got paid maybe $100. So that was cool. But that was fun. That was a big deal for me at the time. And I was doing walk around magic. And then, it kind of went on from there.
Were there other magicians in your area or even magic shops or conventions or anything else like that was really part of that early journey? Or was it just you and the internet?
Honestly, it was just me and the internet. There was a couple magicians. There was a magician I went to school with, and he mostly did children's magic and did balloon animals and stuff. And he recommended what do you call it? A magic circle thing.
Yep, magic club.
Yeah, a club. And I think I went once, and they let me. That was kind of cool because honestly, it did help because that was the first time that I kind of surrounded myself with other magicians. And like, you know, for a long time, it felt like, you know, I didn't really know many other magicians and I wasn't in that realm of things. But then once I went there, it was like, oh, okay, a lot of these people have the same thoughts, the same ideas. And they let me do, I remember it was really funny. At this time, I haven't done any like stand-up performances, like stage stuff or whatever, but they were like, hey, do you want to do like a magic trick for everyone, like up at the, you know, up at the front? And I was like, really? I get to, like, I can do that? And they were like, yeah, like, go do it. So that was kind of cool. That was kind of like my first performance, I guess.
You know, one of the things I'm really interested in this podcast is the journey. Like, I mean, so far it seems that it would have been very hard to believe in yourself that you could do this as a job. What was that timeline for you? Like, is that a recent thing? Is that, how did this become the actual thing that you do? What's that timeline look like?
Actually, I do have an interesting story about how it really took off, but it was, you know, I was doing like private parties for like nothing, for friends and family. They were like, hey, my son does magic. If you want him to do your birthday party, whatever. I never did children's magic, which was an interesting thing. Like, I never went into doing children's parties or anything like that. I always started with like adults, because I was, even at the very beginning, I was more interested in mentalism. So I was kind of like trying to cater that to adults and stuff. So I did a lot of private parties. A big thing was when I did, basically, one of my relatives had a friend who owned a theater around where I live. So I planned like my first public show. I rented out the theater, and, you know, that was like, it's so funny to think about, because I remember how nervous I was and how I wrote like a whole script, and it was all very like planned out. And that was like a huge step for me, because I was so nervous. And I even remember now, like, I was shaking. But I remember I did that, and to practice that, to go up on stage, to learn, I actually started doing a lot of open mics. I did a lot of open mics. I did a lot of like comedy club open mics, and just at theaters that had open mic nights that were normally for music. But I started doing like quick, you know, like the invisible deck. You know, that would be like an easy thing I knew how to do. I would go up and I would just learn that way. Then I did my first theater show. And then the real story of how it all took off, which is such a crazy story, but I was getting my haircut at a barber shop here in Syracuse. And, you know, the barber at one point asked me like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, oh, you know, I told him where I worked, because at the time I worked at a grocery store, but I was like, I also do magic. And they were like, what, you do magic? So, you know, I did a trick where I guessed the barber's passcode on his phone, right? So that was like a week before. So then I go and get my haircut again. And so every time I would come in, he's like, he like tells everyone who's getting their haircut, he's like, this guy, he guessed my passcode. You know, he's crazy. And this girl who was there was getting her haircut. And she came up to me afterwards, and she's like, oh, so you're a mentalist, or you do magic? And I was like, yeah. And I started to kind of like explain what it is. She's like, no, I know what it is. She's like, I work with mentalists and magicians all the time. I am part of an agency that books for colleges. We do things called like NACA and APCA and stuff. And I had no idea what that was at the time. So I was like, oh, right. So I showed her a trick, and we exchanged information. And then that was how I started in the college market. And yeah, it wasn't soon after my first like show that I started doing the college market. So I did it really early and inexperienced, but it helped me gain experience. And I think the college market is what helped me a lot gain that experience.
Talk to me a little bit about your feelings on like magic versus mentalism, because I think at some point you decided on it being mentalism, which means that a lot of times while you're looking at material and while you're making decisions, like a lot of things just don't make the cut. And that can be in some senses disappointing, in other senses, you know, like really wonderful that there are, you know, that you have an area that you play in, which I think other people don't necessarily have. Was there a moment where you said no more magic tricks for Dustin? Like what was that like?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It still is hard, because I still like try to find ways to sneak magic tricks that I really like, that are just magic and not mentalism. I'm like, oh, I want to do this. I try to sneak them in, because I'm the kind of person, like, there is a huge debate of, mentalism versus magic. And if you're a mentalist, you can't even mention magic. You can't even you can't have playing cards. I'm totally against that, because I'm all about honesty and truth. And the honesty with me is that I started as a magician, and and a mentalist is a magician. I tell people that all the time. Like, it's just a fancy name for a magician. I just do things that have to do with mind reading instead of visual stuff. But I'm very honest with my audience. So I literally explain to them, like in my show, I'll be like, now as a mentalist, like I use playing cards just like a magician would, but I use them in a little bit of a different way. So I find that by being honest and open with people, like, that's totally fine. You can use whatever you want. I could do a visual magic trick if I want, because I could say, this is how I started. This is, it's all part of it. However, it's completely, there is a good argument for the fact that, like, obviously as a mentalist, I shouldn't be doing just visual magic tricks, and you want to limit it. And it's true. And it can be hard, because there's a lot of good magic out there that I have to kind of be like, oh, well, I can't really do that because it doesn't really fit me and my character. And but I think that's also an important lesson, because us as performers, like, we should be kind of looking at what fits us. Like, does certain magic fit us? How can we make it fit us? Are there things that are just like, there's no way this is going to fit me? And I think as you grow as a performer and you start doing more shows and you start learning what you're all about, that kind of helps you. Because now it's like, I used to buy magic all the time. Like, every chance I was like, oh, this is new, I want to buy that. But now it's like, I'm very selective. I'm like, is this really going to fit me in my show? Even though it's cool and it's a great method, is it going to fit me? Is it going to fit what I want? So
you said something a second ago there, which I think is interesting, which is, as a mentalist, I'm all about truth, which seems like almost the exact opposite, but plays a little bit into sort of what you're doing on TikTok. As we slowly get into talking about what you're doing there, debunking psychics and things like that, is there a reason why you're like, I think a lot of us magicians, we feel really negative about like psychics and nonsense like that. But, most magicians just sort of, grit their teeth, tell a friend that the palm reader's not real or whatever, and then go about their day. Did something happen in your world or anything like that you have a vendetta against all of these, fake psychics and things like that?
It's funny. I get that comment a lot on TikTok. They're like, what was your villain origin story?
Yeah.
What do you think? No, there is no story of me being hurt by a psychic or anything like that, or nothing really, honestly. I think, I don't know what it is, but ever since I was kind of young, like, I've always been all about like the truth and uncovering the truth. Like, detective stuff has always interested me, and learning the truth and discovering the secrets. So I think, and maybe that goes hand in hand with being a magician, is that, like, we're all about discovering secrets and learning things. And it's just something I always tell people, it's something about knowing these techniques and having these skills that not everyone has, learning secrets of mentalism and magic, and learning how to fool people. I think that's important, is we as magicians, we learn how to fool people, which means we're really good at knowing when someone is being fooled. So by having this skill set, I think it's like unfair to not share that with other people and use that skill set to be like, hey, you're being fooled, other people are being fooled, this is what they're doing, this is how they're doing it, and just helping. So no, I guess there really is no interesting story of what a psychic did to make me like that, but it's just how I've been, I guess.
Let's talk a little bit about what it is that you're doing on TikTok. So, it seems like most of a good chunk of your content comes from this sort of like debunking thing. How did it start, and what exactly is it if maybe someone hasn't seen that yet?
Yeah, so it's important to note that when I first started doing TikTok, I felt like I needed to do what would be considered social media magic, doing visual magic, like not camera editing tricks, but like tricks for the camera. And it wasn't getting a lot of attention, because I was just another magician doing magic tricks on the internet. And it didn't really fit me. In fact, if you go back and you look at my old videos, like, it's nothing like how I am in real life. Even in my performing world as a mentalist, it's nothing. I guess for me, it was kind of fun to be able to do those magic tricks again. But I wasn't really passionate about it. And I think that really translates into what you're doing. And things aren't going to take off if you're not truly passionate about it. So one day I decided, I saw a video of a self-claimed psychic who was bending a spoon in the most lame way. She was saying that it wasn't even like a visual way. She was just like holding a spoon and she was like, yeah, if you focus on it, you can like, and she showed like a graph that showed like science about making particles speed up. And she's like, if you focus on it, she's like, I can't bend it, but if you focus on it, then you can bend it. She just like bent it. And people were amazed. It had like 1 million views, like whatever. And I was like, all right, I'm going to make a video on this because, this is ridiculous. Anyone can bend a spoon. And I made a video on it. And that was like one of my first videos that like really kind of blew up. And I was like, oh, okay, people are liking this. I'm passionate about this. This is what I would love to do. So I went back to making some magic, but then I started doing more debunking videos. And as I did them, they started to get more and more attention. And me kind of describing things like the ideomotor response, because there was people that were doing this thing where they would take a crystal and put it on the end of their fingertips and they would focus on it or like go like this and it would fall off. And as a mentalist and magician, I knew what that was. It was the ideomotor response, like pendulums. So I did it with like an M&M and I said, look, there's no energy here. It's literally just an M&M. And I made it happen and explained it. That went super viral. And from there, I just started to realize like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I enjoy doing. Other people are enjoying watching it. And I started to look at my influences of like Darren Brown and James Randi and Houdini. And I started to kind of follow in their footsteps and start debunking psychic and supernatural claims, not just psychics, but like paranormal things, haunted things, and just people who I think were faking things. And I would break them down, explain them, replicate them. And now I offer a challenge on TikTok for $10,000 for anyone who can like prove their psychic abilities on a live with me, which 4 have attempted, 4 have failed, and no one else has attempted.
So many things on there that I want to talk about. The first is this idea of like doing magic tricks for a camera. I think that a lot of magicians find distaste in it because, we've been trained by doing magic for so long about doing like the opposite of a short 30-second bite-sized thing that, we've literally learned how to do the exact opposite. And sometimes to do these videos that are incredibly short, you either have to, go a direction that you don't want to go, like, tutorial videos. We've all seen those videos where someone's like, showing how a trick works while they're doing it, or doing some magic that's like, not the kind of stuff that you do, but maybe fits into that, 10-second time frame. Or, sometimes it's ridiculously difficult and you can come up with some awesome stuff, but you take like 80 takes or something like that. I think it's stopping a lot of magicians from posting online. Certainly myself, like, I couldn't post something online that's under a minute that's a magic trick because like I want to talk, I want to do the thing. I don't do magic tricks that are like visual and happen in 1 second and then it's over and are available to scrutiny. So I think that a lot of people probably resonate with that and feels to me like you found a way out.
Yeah, that's basically what it was. I found my way out of that, like just visual magic tricks, redundant. One thing I will say about that is I think from learning that, first of all, you don't have to do that to go viral. Even as a magician, you don't have to just make videos about magic. You don't have to, you can really branch out, just do things that you're passionate about or interested or other people would be interested in, and maybe find a way to combine your magic. So like even like Jeff Newman is doing like he's getting a lot of attention on TikTok for doing like these silly like jokes with his daughter, I think is who it was. But
I'm pretty sure it's his wife.
Is his wife? I thought it was wife and daughter. I don't know. Whatever. Sorry,
it is his wife, but awesome.
making jokes, and he like that gained a lot of attention. But then he's able to also like make videos about him, kind of doing like the mentalism thing and magic thing. So he's able to like put those in there. So you don't have to be like constricted to just doing magic if you're really trying to grow in social media. But also one thing I noticed is like Giovanni, he does like a lot of social media magic and TikTok. And he literally did a trick where it wasn't even a trick, but he takes like a paper bag and he like throws something into it, and then he pulls it out, and he has his middle finger out, and it literally got like 40 million views. It was like the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. And since then, he's been able to just do silly things like that. And it's like, there's so many different things you can go viral for. So don't feel like you have to do one specific thing.
I also think, one advantage that you have that I think other people would be wise to play with in replicating is the talking head. I think when I scroll through TikTok, most of it is just people talking directly to their camera. Very few of it is like, producers, anything actually going on aside from someone just like talking to their camera. Maybe there's, a duet, or they're playing another video or something like that. And I think that it's the kind of thing that you can put out 2 or 3 in a day, or you can put out 10 in a week or something like that, because it's very easy to produce, and it can be interesting and easy to produce, and you can get that sort of volume out, versus to actually make like magic content where the magic is different, and maybe you're performing for live audiences and things like that. Like, it is very difficult to get that quantity in that you'd be able to do with a talking head video.
Yeah. And TikTok I've been preaching this since I first started on TikTok is the opposite of YouTube. It is not about quality of video. It's not about quality of audio. TikTok is all about being genuine and being like, some people, like a lot of younger kids now, like they'll take like their phone and they'll like set it down as they're filming. Like, it's just very like, haphazard, like, oh, I'm starting a video. And like, it's all about that. It's all about that connection with that person. So yeah, I feel like it's so weird. Like, the videos where I'm literally just talking to the camera, like, do better sometimes. Like, it's just, instead of doing some crazy magic trick or visual thing, even as a magician, you can instead of doing like magic tricks, you can literally just do a story time, talk about a show you did, something funny that happened at a show, and just be engaging, and people will definitely be interested in that.
One thing about the debunking videos that is really interesting is I have watched a video that you have later debunked, and like, I know that there's not psychics, but I'm like, how the hell are they doing this? Like, I'm fooled as to how they're doing this. My first question is like, do you sometimes have to like do research or dig around or ask friends or things like that, how things are going on? Like, it's almost like, how do you know so much of these techniques that maybe aren't from magic books, maybe aren't, people maybe, I don't know where some of it is, obviously a lot of it is, but how do you figure some of this stuff out?
That's a good question. And I guess, so sometimes I will reach out to Banachek. I message Banachek a lot because he was like, obviously a big influence on me, and he debunked a lot of psychics in his time and still does. And I reach out to him sometimes. I reach out to Spidey because he loves that. He loves debunking psychics too. Like, he'll message me all the time. He's like, that freaking liar. Like, he's like, he gets so passionate about it. But sometimes I'll discuss it with other magicians or mentalists, and I'll be like, hey, have you ever seen this anywhere? But like, sometimes, like, for example, she was called the Candle Girl on TikTok, and she said she was like a witch, and that she got like millions of views for making a candle like light itself. And what struck me as really interesting is I could tell it wasn't editing. I could tell it was like real, like happening in real time, but it was like no other method that I've ever seen. Like, no magician has ever done it. I researched it, couldn't find it. Like, everything I found was about using like chemicals to make like a spark reaction. So I did at that time, I was like trying to figure it out. And I was literally in the bathroom in our apartment that I lived in at the time. And I literally caused like a fire. Like, it was bad. Like, I like mixed these chemicals. Like, I went in the magic cafe at one point, like they were like listing chemicals. So I put it in a plastic cup, and it like exploded the cup. And I was like, all right, we're not going to do this. So I was like, I don't think this is what they're doing, because like, this is not working. So all of a sudden I had this idea, and I watched more of her videos, and I was like, it's a slow, just like perfect ignition of a candle, of the wick. And I was like, all right, I'm going to look up like I don't know how it came to be. I think it was because it was during COVID, and I was like, what do we all have at home right now? Like, what's something that everyone has right now that we're all using? And I thought of hand sanitizer. And I came across a video because I was looking up, like, I would like YouTube, like how to start flames, with science. And one of them was a video about, it was actually funny. I mean, not funny, but it was like a tragic video that led me to figuring it out. But it was a video about how there was this invisible fire that happened at a raceway for race cars, because they used to use like pure ethyl alcohol to fuel the cars. And they don't do that anymore because there was like a huge fire that happened when one of the cars crashed, and people were just like invisibly on fire. Like they couldn't see the flame, but as soon as it like caught to their clothes, then it turned into like real fire. So people were just like running around on fire. And I was like, that's sad, but also that did help me figure this out. So I was like, hand sanitizer has ethyl alcohol. And I just put hand sanitizer on the wick, covered it, lit it. And after about 10 to 15 seconds, the flame is invisible at first, but once the hand sanitizer burns away, it burns the wick and it just slowly lights. And that's what I was like, all right, this is it. I know this is what she's doing. And I made a video of it. And then later she admitted it, that is exactly how she was doing it. Which was crazy. It was a whole thing. It was kind of insane.
That's wild. That's a wild story. And it's awesome that you are propelled to invent or problem solve, and not just like, hey, I know that you're using this like secret thing, but you're like, how is she doing this? Like, I know it's not real, but how is she doing it? It kind of like takes me back to when I was 14 and I'd see a magic video online and try to like recreate it. It's the same right. Sort of vibe. We all know, putting random stuff together. I mean, maybe not everyone's lit their bathroom on fire, but I think many people have done this kind of thing where you're just like trying. You're like, maybe it's with string, maybe it's with, like, I don't know, you're like taping stuff together. Are there any people or any videos which you haven't figured out, so you haven't debunked?
I'm trying to think, because there's nothing that I haven't like watched and was like, man, I don't know how to do this, so I'm not going to debunk it. Nothing that I can think of that I'm like, oh, I don't. And it's not that like, maybe I just didn't look into it or anything. There's a lot of videos where I'll be honest, like a lot, especially haunted videos, paranormal videos that I think are editing. Like there's this duo called Ben and Laney or something on TikTok. And it was a big controversial thing because I debunked them once using practical things, like strings and stuff. But later they were caught to be using like a green screen suit, and they caught them because the reflection on their TV literally showed the guy in his green screen suit. So they eventually had to come out and say, they do this for entertainment and they didn't mean to like mislead anyone, blah, 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 whatever. So when it comes to editing, I usually I'll send it over to a friend of mine named Kenny Biddle. And he is like a ex-paranormal investigator. He still investigates paranormal claims. Like he goes to supposedly haunted houses all the time, but he calls himself like an ex-paranormal investigator because he used to believe in those kind of things. And now he doesn't. He's a huge skeptic. He's like, everything I've ever investigated, it never comes up with anything substantial. So he does mostly that. He mostly does like the paranormal stuff on TikTok and stuff. So I send those to him.
I'm going to ask a question that I sort of know a bit of the answer to, but it's worth asking anyways, which is, you see all these people, somebody gets like 1 million subscribers in like a month by putting up these videos. And then, do you ever think to yourself, like, what if I, did for evil and not for good? Like, what if you weren't debunking, but you were making it?
Yes. And I did do that, but it wasn't really for evil. It was for good and evil at the same time, because what I started to do is I had the same exact thought process. I was like, man, like I'm spending so much time and effort debunking these when I could just be doing them and I'd get like 1 million views easy. Like they get so many views, so easy, lots of gullible people. And plus it's entertaining. So I started to do these projects inspired by James Randi. And when he used to do like these undercover projects, like he did with Banachek. And I was like, all right, I'm going to get my friend from school and I'm going to make her a medium. Like we're going to make her a psychic medium and she's going to play this character and we're going to make a whole separate TikTok account And she did. And basically she made like we were talking, the talking head videos. It was very like non-produced. Like she was like putting the phone down and she would just talk about how she's a psychic medium and the experiences she had. And it started really subtle. Like she would talk about it and like a picture in the background would like move a little bit, but we wouldn't talk about it. She wouldn't mention it. You would have to like really look. And I knew people would, so they would like comment like, "Oh my God, didn't you see the picture move?" And a psychic medium at the time who I was like debunking, and she hates me. She blocked me and said she would sue me, all this stuff. But she commented on it and she was like, "You have a negative spirit there. I can see it." When really it was just me the whole time faking it. And there was a part where another video where she was like using dowsing rods and a book flew like off the table. So that was like my first project, and immediately, like within a couple of days, started to go crazy viral. She had, within a week, had over 20,000 followers, over 1 million views combined. I think it was overall, it was like 3 million views. And that was easy. I mean, for me, it took me forever to get that, but for that, easy, simple. But then I revealed it was me the whole time. And I started to fall in love with doing that. So I made more fake things. I made a fake haunted doll page. And that got 200,000 followers within a couple of days. And now sits at over 20 million overall views combined for the fake haunted doll.
And have you revealed that it's you yet or no?
Yes. Yeah. So I revealed it was me, which was amazing. That went viral as well, me revealing it. And now a big reason I did it was to promote a show that I was doing. I now offer like a haunted doll seance show that I do for colleges. So that went extremely well. And I was really happy with that.
That is awesome. Do you have currently any secret accounts that we don't know? Are you out in the world?
Technically, yes. I did reveal it in a comment, but I don't think a lot of people saw it. And the only reason I commented with that profile was because I recently debunked my own fake page and showed how it was a crazy, so it was a trick where a water bottle, like I put a water bottle down on a table and I crush it with like the force of energy. And one of my fake pages went viral for that. It got like over 1 million views and the same thing. And so I debunked it, and someone was like, "This guy did it completely different. Like you're totally wrong." And I like commented with the fake page and was like, "Nope, it's me. That's how I did it, and it's my own page." So
awesome. That is awesome. Are you ever fearful? Like obviously, we're like, you're like doing good. You're like sharing truth. You're like doing all that. But in another sense, like, people are through whatever evil ways or unclear ways. This is for a lot of them their business. Maybe they've got products. Maybe they've got like, they're on like the creator fund or whatever. And like, I'm sure they're really pissed in the same way that a magician is pissed when people comment how he does his videos and stuff in some video below that. Are you ever first like sort of, personally, and then like out in the real world, first, like, do you ever feel bad about what you're doing? I mean, it's like evil fighting evil, and then on the other sense, like, are you ever worried someone's going to really come after you? Like, it's not that hard to Google you and know where you live and like, figure that kind of thing out. So first of all, do you ever feel bad about ruining what these people have built for a long time? And then also, are you worried for yourself, that people are going to really take some action against you?
Yeah, so good question. So no, I don't really feel bad. And the only reason I don't feel bad is because it is an intentional decision that they're making to be what I call and what other people call a grief vampire. So they are like really, especially psychic mediums, but really taking advantage of someone who is in a bad situation, who's grieving, and making money off of them. And I like the way James Randi put it, is that magicians are honest liars. So we tell someone we're going to fool them, and then we do. Whereas psychics are just like, nope, this is what I do for real. This is genuine. And then they still scam people. So I see them more as con artists. However, I do believe genuinely that there are some people who think what they're doing is real and genuine.
People that you debunk, they think, they put ethanol on the tip of their candle and they think it's real, or
I don't think those people.
I'm using that as an example, but like
Yeah.
anybody who has a method, how can they think that it's real? Like, help me understand that.
I think so. I think a lot of psychic mediums or psychics, like I've definitely genuinely met some that think they're hearing spirits or they are hearing something in them that is telling them to say this thing. When in reality, I think, scientifically, I think it's just your own inner voice telling you an educated guess or a guess, because it's all about confirmation bias. It's all about, they focus on the times that they're right. And they're like, how would I have known that otherwise? Like that, I knew that. I knew this was going to happen. I knew this person's mother's name, but they really ignore the hundreds of times that they've guessed things completely wrong. So I think they really start to, and Peter Turner said the same thing a long time ago, is that like they really start to believe what they're doing is real. The more you start to guess things and you get things right, you start to really focus on those rather than what you're wrong with. And you start to really believe like, I must have some type of gift or ability. So I do think some people do genuinely believe it. However, those people usually don't charge money, or they don't like, they do it as a hobby, or, just something they feel is something they have.
And also those are probably not people that you're debunking, because there's not a method that they're doing, they're maybe just guessing at things like.
Right. And I'll explain that and what cold reading is and what guessing is and confirmation bias, but I don't really like target those people. I really try to target like people who are really, I know, are taking advantage of people, like especially TV psychics and like really like big name psychics that charge a lot of money. And the second question, am I scared? I'm not scared, but I have had some like pretty bad things happen. Like there's a guy I debunked who I call Peanut Butter Boy. And I started calling him that when I first debunked him, because he had a video that went really viral where he took peanut butter jar and he rolled it across the table, and then he like he mimed pulling it back with his energy, and it like rolled back towards him. And that video went super viral, and he said it was telekinesis. However, I knew it's just science.
It's just some peanut butter in the jar or whatever.
Yeah, like that's just gonna happen. Like most of the time, if you roll a jar of peanut butter, it's gonna go forward and it's gonna come back. So I challenged him. I thought it was funny, and I made a video. I was kind of like lighthearted at first. It was like, maybe he's not even serious. Like, but boy, was I wrong, because he was very serious and very dedicated to what he believed was like psychic energy, telekinesis. And ever since that happened, since I debunked him, he went like crazy. Like he started making multiple accounts. He eventually, even though I made like one video about him, but he kept going. He kept making videos about me. He eventually found out where I live, and he was like emailing me and saying he's going to call the police, and that I'm an alien that's like meant to destroy his kind of people, that I'm a racist against psychics, which I was like, that's not a thing, but all right. So then, even just recently, like a couple months ago, he started leaving reviews on my Facebook business profile that were like, this guy smokes crack at parties, don't hire him. And I was like, all right. So I just reported it and got it removed. But it's like, that kind of does worry me, because I'm like, how can they, not even I guess I'm more worried about my business than I am my life. I'm like, what can they do to ruin my business? But yeah, I guess sometimes there is a risk for sure challenging these people, because you never know what kind of mindset they're in.
That's wild. It is wild to see this. And it really does feel like, a modern day James Randi on the, he went late night show to late night show, and that's what people watched. And this is, TikTok for you page to TikTok for you page. So it's really awesome to watch it unfold in real time and to watch this stuff happen. And, you'd think that the way that internet and technology advances, that there's less people believing in nonsense, but it's probably more, like
it's getting worse.
If not the same. Yeah, it's probably more. Let's talk a little bit about like practically, you have 500,000 followers on TikTok, and videos get, 1 million, 2 million, 5 million, crazy numbers, these views get. Does it help your business? Does it help enough? What does the helping of your business look like? Because I think a lot of magicians they think about posting on social media and they think like, I'm going to post, I'm going to go viral. People are going to book me. I'm going to be famous. People are going to like, book me. Does that happen? Does it happen a little bit? What does that look like?
So I will say it is, no, it's definitely not like, you're just going to get a bunch of bookings from your social media, but it is kind of surprising how many I will get or find out that that's how they found me. And I think it helps specifically with a couple of markets, because most recent, like I just did a wedding the other week and I thought they just found me randomly, like online. But after I did it, they were like, or no, when I was there, they were like, yeah, we like saw you on TikTok and we found out you lived near us and we loved what you did. And so they like looked me up. And I just got another lead for someone who was like, they literally put in the message, like, we saw you on TikTok, we love what you do, and we see you do weddings. We have a wedding coming up. So I think it can help, especially with like younger audiences. It has helped me get like a corporate gig, but it's not my focus. I don't like focus on trying to get leads. And I think that can be something that can hurt people who are trying to get into social media. Because if you try to just go on there and like purposely try to get bookings or leads, and that's your like motivation, people aren't going to see that as like genuine content.
People can smell the sales early,
yeah, they can smell the sales on it, and you're gonna like, that's not gonna help. So I think instead of thinking of social media as like a lead source or like something that like you should do to get leads, I think it can be something that is just like a surprising side effect that can happen. So I think that is kind of the most you'll get out of it. And I think it might be different for people who I've seen. There are some mentalists or magicians that like, they only do performance videos of like street magic. I don't know if what's their experience. Does that help them get more bookings because they're just focused on that? I don't know, because again, it's not really showing them doing things for their audiences. So it's not like, they're not just showing like corporate videos, because those probably wouldn't do as well as like street magic. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't have experience with that.
I softly know the answer to this question, but where do the bulk of your leads come from?
I would say bulk would come from, it's like a tie between just like SEO, like people looking me up, and a site like Bark, which I use a lot. But honestly, like now, and ever since working with you, it's kind of like, it's becoming very evenly tied. Like Google Ads is starting to really help a lot. Like I'm getting more and more from Google Ads. So a lot of it, I feel like, is like just SEO, Google Ads.
I will share that I think, from working with a lot of magicians, yourself included, who do the social media thing and have a pretty big following, I think the two areas that it really does help with is in straight, first of all, I think SEO. There's lots of people linking to you all over the world on social and on websites and things like that, because you're sharing so much that you actually get a lot of links to your name and to your website that are helping you show up. But the other thing is, in the decision-making process, you scope out someone's stuff and you're like, who is this guy? What does he do? You Google him, you look him up on TikTok, you look at all these platforms, and to see 500,000 followers, 100,000 followers, viral video, to see that, it's a convincer that you know what you're doing. All other things being equal, a magician with 1,000 followers, a magician with 20,000 followers, like you just think that the 20,000 one is like more famous or more well known, or a better or a safer decision because more people sort of follow them and more people trust them. So I'm sure it's hard to track, because I'm sure you didn't really,
unless they tell me.
Yeah, compared to what it's like before or anything like that. But I think that it does make a big difference, and it will help a lot more people say yes and feel like you're the right fit. Because there's nothing worse than someone scoping you out and seeing like 300 followers and weird photos with your dogs and stuff, and they're like, "Is this like who I think it is?" So
I do tell magicians a lot that like that is how I view social media. I see social media, TikTok, all that stuff as the new TV. It's like social proof that you can use as like a badge to say like, here you've seen me on TikTok. People, hundreds of millions of people have seen me worldwide. It's kind of like, or like how people say as seen on America's Got Talent, as seen on Fool Us. You can really kind of use social media the same kind of way. And a lot of people, especially in the college market, a lot of them aren't really watching TV as much. They're watching social media. So you can definitely use that for sure as social proof.
I want to talk a little bit about how this debunking and how this thinking translates to your magic and to sort of the ethics of what you do. You do a show where you pretend there's like a haunted doll, and you do mentalism where it sort of looks like, it really looks and feels like, you're doing what you're saying you're doing. Do you have pretty strict like warnings before the show? This isn't real. Like, do you try to do that? Or do you think, we're in the curtain of entertainment, let them experience it however they experience it?
This is like my favorite discussion ever. Like, I will fight other magicians and mentalists all day on this because the biggest thing I hear is, well, like you just said, we're in a current of like if someone's watching a show, they know it's entertainment. They know what they signed up for. And they say like, you don't go to a movie and at the movie in the beginning, it says like, this is not real. This is all fake. And then what I say to that is that's not true at all. In fact, legally, movies do have to say not at the beginning, but the end, it says, this story is fictional. It is not based on any, if it's based on any likeness or whatever, because they don't want to get sued. So yeah, even movies do have a disclaimer at the end that say, this isn't real. These are fictitious people. And I think the huge difference is you can't compare it to that, because when you go see, let's say, a theater show on Broadway and you see, let's say, like Phantom of the Opera, like not only is that just a totally different realm of things that you're watching performers do like a music act, it's based off of a book or a movie. And at the end, they come out. This is a big thing for me that I think of is like after the end of a theater show and they're done doing this, they come out and they say who they are, like not the character names. They say this person plays this and they take their bow. That is like their moment of saying like, this is who I really am. This was the character I was playing. So us as magicians and mentalists, we have a completely different set of rules, I think, because what we do is we come out and a lot of us, we don't say we're playing a character. We don't say, hey, I'm playing this, I'm playing mentalist Dustin Dean, or I'm playing Dustin Dean mentalist, but my real name's Dustin Dean and whatever. And I'm just a normal person. What we do is we go out there and we entertain people. And for some of us, like, especially mentalists, like you're doing things that would like people will genuinely believe. That is some type of like, I can't tell you how many times that I've had people come up to me after my show and say like, well, you have to have a psychic gift. You have to have a gift. You couldn't do it any other way. And the people will genuinely believe. And a lot of magicians will say, well, like, they're going to believe whatever they want to believe. But we, as being the people who's like showing this, we have a responsibility to really educate people on like, what we're doing. We don't have to just present something as real and be like, well, it's up to them to believe it or not. Because what we're doing is so realistic. It's so fooling. People are genuinely fooled. And we're like, to me, it's definitely something we have a responsibility of doing. I don't think you need to shove it into their faces and really be like, hey, I'm going to start this magic show. It's all fake. However, what I do is every single show I do is I talk about how I'm a skeptic and I don't believe in psychic powers and I don't believe in the supernatural. And everything I do is a combination of different techniques, psychology, misdirection, sometimes just simple magic tricks. And I always say that kind of thing. I try to interweave it with the show so that it's not just like, it's kind of interesting. And it's still educating them that what I do is not like a genuine psychic ability. I think disclaimers can be important, but I do think it depends on what you're doing. If you're like a children's party magician, no, I don't think you need to do that. But I would think if you are like a serious mentalist who is like really demonstrating psychic powers, yeah, I think you should, honestly. But
When you watched Darren Brown stuff when you were a kid, you thought that it was real, and that's what got you here. And that's what made it as entertaining as it was. And even like a couple of years ago, I was in New York and Darren had his show on Broadway, and I invited my cousin, and my cousin came with, and my cousin, who is a high profile lawyer, basically was like, this guy's got to be reading my body language. This guy has to be reading my mind. And I'm very torn about the whole thing. Like, now I have to be like debunking Darren Brown to my cousin, and like, so I feel very torn about the whole thing. Like, does it take away a little bit from the show if you know that it's not real? Does it like, what do you feel about it?
I'm about to be controversial because that is something that I have thought about, and Darren Brown was like my biggest influence, right? And exactly what you were saying. He convinced a lot of people, even magicians, that what he was doing was like real psychological techniques. And he presented it that way. And I think personally that what he did is almost just as bad as what psychics do, because he is now, and the reason I say that, I know it's controversial, and Darren Brown is like I love Darren Brown. He's everything I want to be in a performer. But I think what he did is he really kind of harmed what actual science, or what people think about actual science, because there's even people who use his videos, and I hear this all the time from like comments and stuff, that they use his videos in like psychology classes for kids as like demonstrations of what. And it's just not possible. The things and he knows that, and he says that himself. Like, he doesn't believe in NLP. He doesn't believe in those things. So I've thought about that myself, and I was like, that's got to be, I think he himself, he's definitely started to move from that. And he says now, and if you watch, like, he has a Penguin lecture where he like, it's mostly just a discussion, but he says how he did in the beginning really say it was real psychic powers, psychological techniques. And now he's moved and shifted to saying like, he uses magic tricks and conjuring tricks. And he kind of says that in his disclaimer. And he talks about how people will, either way, they'll believe what they want to believe after you tell them, which is very true. People still think I have psychic gifts, even though I tell them I don't. But I think I can't speak for him, but I think he might possibly kind of regret it a little bit, because people really genuinely started to believe that he was just using psychology and not using magic tricks. And I think that had the same effect of misinformation that psychic powers have. So I understand it's kind of a fine line you have to draw of what you want people to believe in. And really it comes down to what you morally want to project and what you think you're leading people to believe. So I guess it's more of a personal decision of what you want to do.
I am torn about the whole thing. I've thought about it a lot. One of the reasons why I do magic and not mentalism is because I dislike the conversations that I have to have after I do mentalism. It's awkward. I dislike it. It's really awkward. That's honestly one of the bigger reasons. I mean, there's more like artsy and philosophical reasons, but one of the biggest is like, now I have to have a conversation about something that I'm not, and either tell them that I'm not, and like, it's just a nightmare, like.
I think, and this is kind of how I view it, and the way I've been doing it is I tell people, like during my show and everything, that no matter how impossible it seems, like there should be no explanation. And it seems like I'm doing this psychic ability, but even when it seems like there's no explanation, there is an explanation. There's always something, a technique behind it. And people, I think, really grasp onto that as being entertaining. Like, I think the idea of doing something that's so fooling to them that they are like, okay, you're telling me it's not real, but it has to be, or like, I don't understand how then. I think society is shifting to that direction of things. And same thing with like people revealing magic tricks on social media. Like Chris Ramsey said it too, how society and magic is kind of shifting into being like understanding that it's not like real magic, but there's like a skill behind it. There's what we do is invisible and you don't ever see it, but it is like a serious skill we all have as magicians and mentalists, and something we learn. And I think by showing that to people, instead of being like, well, this is just a gift I was born with, by being like, this is something I've practiced and I've learned. And it really shows people like, wow, this is kind of cool, kind of incredible that you can learn something like that. You can do that. So I think, I don't think by telling people like it's not a real gift I have, I don't think it really makes it any less entertaining. I think it actually makes people more interested in like, how else could you be doing it?
I think it makes it different. That's what I think.
It does make it different.
I think it makes it different. And I don't know that Darren Brown would be Darren Brown that we know today if he did mentalism with heavy disclaimers and that the world or the viewers were not genuinely fooled that he's doing what he says that he's doing. And, but also I agree with what you say. And I never want people to leave things knowing that thinking that I do something that's real. You know, there's a trick that I do where basically someone takes a deck, puts a card in their pocket. You know, that's basically the whole thing. And I used to guess it with body language, and now, or you know, whatever. Oh, this and that. You moved when I said 7 or whatever nonsense. And then now I just say the card, or I do, you know, like, and I inspired from Danny to Ortiz. I like drop the deck on the table and I listen, and then I say, oh, I think it's a black card. Oh, I think it's a spade. And for me, back to, I was talking about some of the philosophical stuff earlier. Like, I like when people think there's no way what he just did is real, versus going, wow, what he just did is amazing. You know, like I'd like them to talk themselves into a paradox instead of them being like, I didn't know that you could read someone's body language. And, you know, that's how I feel. But man, is it a complicated issue. It is a complicated cookie.
And I completely agree with you about Darren. I think like for me, it's not like, you know, I'm saying like he shouldn't have done what he did or else, because like, you're right. Like if he wouldn't have done it, he probably wouldn't have been as famous as he is now. So it was like definitely a great decision for him. But I think the important thing is the discussion of like, what can that lead to and what effects can that have? Like, that's it. First of all, if we just stop and think about that, that's insane that a mentalist, a magician, like had an effect on people's thinking in society.
And he also did debunking. Right?
So it's insane that he, like, literally a magician, changed how millions of people think about psychology and what's possible with it. And like people use it in classes and universities to demonstrate. Like that really attests to the fact that we do have a lot of power as performers to like shape the way people think.
Wild. This stuff is wild. You know, this is such an interesting topic about, you know, on one hand, it's like the stuff we do has such a serious effect on people. And, you know, it's really important that we're very cautious about how we do it. On the other hand, like, we're doing card tricks. Someone's writing a word on a page and we're telling them what it is, you know, like, so I sit with that dichotomy too. Let's sort of gear towards the end of the episode. There are some wrap-up questions that we ask each and every guest. The first is the endless chain. So in order to keep this podcast going on for eternity, each guest is asked to recommend another guest that would be a really great fit for the podcast. There are 2 catches. The first catch is I must not have had interviewed them already. And the second catch is that you must be able to put us in contact and not just say David Copperfield or something like that. Yeah. So who would be a really great fit for this sort of conversation?
What about Joel Myers?
Joel Myers, I have not had.
Because he's like really good. Well, now I think he does mostly cruise ship shows, but he was like, we did a lot of college stuff together.
Cool. Yeah, that's a great name.
Part of the same agency as me.
Joel Myers is a fabulous name for this. That is awesome. Let's move on to the next question. That was a toughie, but you got out alive.
It was tough.
The next question is about modern magic. So what's one thing you like about the world of modern magic and one thing you don't like?
I like that it is, I kind of touch base on this, but it's kind of like the opposite of what you like. I like that it's getting more thinking about how is it done or how could it be possible? And a lot of people are, because of things like Google and social media, there are a lot of people are figuring out how magic tricks work. And I obviously a lot of people hate that. And I also don't enjoy exposure videos for just for exposure. But I do like the fact that people are starting to learn magic and learn some secrets. And it's kind of, in a way, pushing magic forward because we have to think of new avenues of ways to fool people. And I think that goes into hand in hand of what I don't like. I don't like that there is so much exposure out there just for attention. I think that's just like a low level form of attention, just to be like, here's a magic trick, here's how it works. It's just an easy, dumb way to get views and attention. And I think it doesn't really add much value.
The last is plugs. Where can people find you? Where can people follow you? Where can people be a part of your journey?
Yeah, so basically it's just my username for everything is like at Dustin Dean Mentalist. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I don't use, I'm on Twitter, don't use it much because it's confusing to me. But YouTube, Dustin Dean Mentalist, all that good stuff. That's where you can find me.
Well, there you have it. I hope you liked the episode, and I hope, of course, that you learned something. As always, if this was valuable, helpful, interesting to you, then please tell a friend. If you post about this in your local magic club or group or Facebook page, it would mean the world. And if you don't have any of those, then leave a review, because then other magicians can find it just like you. Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to have you, and I'll see you next Thursday. Peace.